My name is Eleanor Merrick, and I wasn't invited to the birth of my first and only grandchild. I didn't get the call when she went into labor. I didn't get the joyful message saying she's here, or you're a grandma. I found out the way you learn about a stranger's wedding or an old friend's passing on Facebook. A blurry photo of my daughter in a hospital bed cradling a swaddled newborn, and the caption beneath it, "Welcome to the world, Ava Rose. You'll only ever know love." That line stayed with me for weeks, not because it was sweet, but because it wasn't meant for me. It was meant against me. You might think there must have been some terrible fight that led to this, some blowout argument, some betrayal. But the truth is quieter, older, more tired. My daughter Claire has always carried something sharp inside her, a judgment I couldn't clean off no matter how much I tried to love her well. She grew up watching me work 3 jobs after her father left. Watching me nurse other people's children, watching me serve from empty cups. And when she got older, that sharp thing turned inward, then outward. She once said to me when she was 16 and angry, "You're not who I want to become." She didn't say it screaming. She said it like she was reporting the weather. And it crushed me more than any raised voice ever could. But I stayed. I stayed through college rejections, boyfriends who ghosted internships that didn't call back. I paid her rent for 2 years while she networked. I showed up to every speaking event when she launched her consulting firm. And when she made it, when she was on magazine covers and panels, I was the quiet one in the back, clapping softly, until she had the baby. And then I was no one. She didn't say I was cut off. She just stopped including me. No calls, no visits. When I reached out, I got short texts. "We're really busy. Can we connect later? Not a great time, Mom. Please understand. Please understand." As if I hadn't spent my entire life trying to understand her. The worst came 3 months after Ava's birth. I sent a small parcel, a soft knitted hat, the same pattern I used when Claire was born. I didn't expect thanks. I just hoped it would fit. 2 weeks later, the package was returned. Unopened. No note. Just a yellow sticker that read, "Refused by recipient." I remember standing in the post office staring at that sticker like it was a verdict. She refused me, not just the gift, me. So before you sit down and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Grace's Truth. Because this isn't just about a grandmother. It's about the line between grace and survival. That line, it came for me the day the phone rang at 4:12 a.m. I was in bed, of course, but I wasn't asleep. Sleep had become a stranger lately, replaced by books and herbal teas and memories that arrived without warning. When I saw her name flash on the screen, my heart didn't race. It froze. I almost didn't answer. Almost let it ring. Almost let her wonder how I felt being ignored. But I picked up. Her voice was shaking. Not sobbing. Not soft. Just shaking. "Mom." Silence. Then, "I need your help." I waited. She didn't apologize. She didn't say she missed me. She just said this: "My nanny quit. The agency's out of backups. I've got this major campaign pitch in D.C. I'm supposed to fly out tomorrow morning. I need someone to watch Ava. Just for the week. Please. Just for the week." That's how they say it. As if the years of silence can be exchanged for 7 days of babysitting. But I didn't say no. I didn't scream. Didn't cry. Didn't whisper, "How dare you?" I just said, "What time should I come?" And then I sat in the dark, the phone still warm in my hand, and I remembered the hat. Still folded, still soft, sitting in my drawer like a prayer that never got heard. I pulled it out, and I packed a bag. As I zipped it shut, I wasn't angry. Not really. What I felt was a strange kind of quiet. Like the moment before a storm begins, when the air isn't calm exactly, but watchful. Because somewhere inside me, I knew this wasn't going to be just for the week. This was the start of something neither of us were ready for. When I arrived at Claire's house the next morning, the front door opened before I even knocked. She didn't greet me, just stepped aside, phone in hand, her hair still wet, her heels already on. Her coat was unbuttoned, and a long navy suitcase stood waiting in the foyer like an obedient dog. She looked me up and down, once my cardigan, my worn leather bag, the soft bundle of the baby hat in my hand, and said flatly, Everything you need is written down. There's a binder on the counter. Then she called out without turning around, Ava. Grandma's here. The words hit my chest like a strange wind. The first time she'd ever called me that. Not with joy, not with reverence, just utility. And then I saw her, Ava. She waddled around the corner of the hallway clutching a green plush dinosaur. Her cheeks were pink from morning cereal. Her hair a wild honey-colored mess that clearly didn't care about binders or business trips. She stopped when she saw me stared with those enormous hazel eyes. For a moment, time suspended. She didn't cry, didn't smile, just looked. Then, without warning, she handed me the dinosaur. And I took it like it was a crown. Claire glanced at her watch. I've emailed the agency authorization in case of emergencies. She eats at 12 naps at 1 screen time after 3. Absolutely no juice. Limit sugar. Don't take her out of the house unless necessary. I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I had no intention of arguing. Not yet. Claire paused at the door, looked down at the baby hat in my hand. She didn't ask what it was, didn't acknowledge it at all, just said, I'll be back Sunday night, maybe Monday morning. I'll text. And then she was gone. I stood in the silence. The house was massive, modern, cold. Gray walls, spotless floors, everything curated like a showroom. Even the toys were arranged in baskets with color-coded labels. Blocks, dolls, puzzles, sensory. But Ava didn't go to any of them. She stayed next to me, dinosaur in hand. Would you like some oatmeal? I asked softly. She nodded. There was something deeply sacred in the smallness of her, something that twisted in my chest in a way I wasn't ready for. As I scooped oats and stirred with almond milk, I tried not to cry, not because I was sad, but because this moment. It should have come so much earlier. I fed her on the tall kitchen stool, my hand steady under the spoon, just as I had done for her mother all those years ago. But Ava was quieter, more thoughtful. She didn't talk much, just chewed and observed me as if trying to piece together a puzzle. After breakfast, she brought me a book. It was Claire's old one, the one I used to read aloud every night. Good night, star. Good night, moon. Good night, you. I'll see you soon. Ava pointed at it and said, Mama reads this too. I opened the cover. My handwriting was still inside. To Claire for the nights when we need stars more than light. Love, Mom. She must have kept it all these years. Claire, the daughter who refused a baby hat but held on to this. I read it aloud, slowly, deliberately, and halfway through Ava crawled into my lap. Not a word, not a sound. Just warm, small trust pressing against all the places I'd buried. Love. Later, I walked through the rooms while she napped. The master bedroom was pristine blush accents, hotel-like bedding. But on the dresser was a photo I hadn't seen in decades. Claire, age 10, on my shoulders at the lake. I was laughing. She was not. I remembered that day. She'd just lost her tooth in the water and refused to smile for the camera. She must have printed this for nostalgia. But nostalgia's tricky. It invites the parts of us we think we've buried. Back in the kitchen, I opened the binder. Ava's daily schedule. Wake, 6:45 a.m. Breakfast, 7:15 a.m. Free play, 8 show a.m. Structured activities rotate flashcards, puzzle stacking blocks. Noon, 30 a.m. Snack carrot sticks, almond butter crackers. 10:45 a.m. Nape, was. Sur 30 p.m. Approved screen time list of videos. 3:00 quad. 00 p.m. Dinner pre-prepared in labeled containers. 00 p.m. Bath and bedtime routine. 6:30 p.m. sharp. Every page was like that. Clinical, obsessed, over-controlled. And at the end, a post-it note written in Claire's tight handwriting. Don't improvise. I smiled. Not kindly. Because motherhood was never about perfection. It was about presence. And Claire, she'd forgotten that somewhere along the way. That night, Ava woke up crying. I came in before the monitor even registered sound. She was sweaty, twisted in the blankets, cheeks damp. I picked her up humming an old lullaby I hadn't sung in years. Her tiny hand curled around my collarbone, and she whispered, "Stay." One word. That was it. But it changed everything. Because it was the first time anyone in that house had asked me to stay. Not to work, not to fill in, just to be there. And I made a quiet promise in that moment. If I was going to stay, it would be on my terms, because I was tired of being the backup plan. And soon, Claire would learn what it meant when a mother comes back into a home that once erased her. The next morning began with the sound of Ava's laughter. It startled me at first, pure, unfiltered joy echoing down the stairs like a forgotten melody. I walked into the living room to find her building a tower with blocks that weren't on the approved list in Claire's binder. Bright, mismatched hand-painted ones. Not from this house. Not color-coordinated. From me. From a box I'd brought when Claire was pregnant, the one she told me to leave in the garage. I'd slipped it in anyway, when no one was looking. Somehow, Ava had found it her own tiny rebellion, choosing chipped nostalgia over polished modernity. I sat beside her and began stacking blocks too. She didn't speak, just handed me pieces as she built. Our rhythm was easy, uncomplicated, until the block tower fell and she let out a frustrated cry. Her lip trembled. She looked to me, testing whether I'd scold or soothe. I smiled. "Let's try again." She blinked, then nodded. That small moment, it told me more than words ever could. This child hadn't just been kept from me. She had been starved of softness, and I suddenly understood something cruel. Claire hadn't just cut me off out of pride. She did it out of fear. Fear that I'd be better at this than she was. That I'd remind Ava of a different kind of love, the kind Claire had spent her whole life trying to forget. Claire's version of motherhood was precision performance, perfection. Mine was scars, lullabies, and knowing when to let go. But that night, as I stood folding Ava's laundry, I found something I didn't expect. An envelope. Tucked into the side of a drawer, not sealed, addressed to Mom. I hesitated. I shouldn't have read it. I know that it wasn't mine yet. But something about the handwriting, smaller than usual, uneven, made my breath catch. I sat down on the edge of the bed and opened it. "Mom, I wrote this." Then rewrote it. Then nearly deleted it. "You were a good mother." I don't say that because I'm supposed to. I say it because it's true. I don't remember you yelling. I remember you quiet. I remember you tired. I remember you always showing up. But I also remember the things I didn't get. The branded lunchboxes. The expensive field trips. The mother-daughter spa days like the other girls had. I was angry at the world, and you were the only one I could afford to blame. When Ava was born, I swore I'd give her everything I never had. But I didn't know how much I was leaving behind to do it. I don't know if I'm writing this to forgive you or to ask forgiveness. Maybe both. Claire, I stared at the paper until the words blurred. Not because they hurt, but because they came too late to undo anything, and just early enough to ruin my resolve. You see, I had already decided. This week with Ava, it was my goodbye gift. One final act of love before I vanished for good. But now it felt like a door had cracked. Not opened, not yet, just cracked. The next day I started bending the rules. I let Ava eat strawberries with her fingers and stain her shirt. We danced in the living room to old Motown songs. She called me Grammy after I sang to her twice. She laughed so hard she hiccuped. That evening, I sent Claire a photo of Ava holding a popsicle. One she definitely hadn't pre-approved. I didn't add a caption. She didn't reply. But at 11:45 p.m. my phone buzzed. Claire again. 3 words. "Is she okay?" I stared at the message. I could have said yes. I could have said she's happy. Or I could have said, "She's more than okay. She's becoming mine." But I didn't respond. Instead, I turned the phone face down and returned to the nursery, where Ava had fallen asleep clutching my old rag doll, the one Claire had once held tight through storms and heartbreak. There's a strange ache in being needed again, especially after years of silence. It's like your heart wants to hope, but your bones warn you not to. Because when you've been discarded once, every act of love feels like a risk. I told myself this was temporary, that I wouldn't get attached. But I lied. And the worst part, I didn't just lie to myself. I lied to Ava too. Because I had no idea how much she was starting to depend on me, or how soon I would be forced to choose between keeping her safe and letting Claire pretend she still had control. And that choice, it would come sooner than I expected. It was Thursday when the cameras caught me. Not red-handed, just human. I was in the kitchen dancing with Ava in my arms. Motown again, Aretha Franklin this time. She loved the rhythm. We twirled in slow circles, her little arms around my neck, our laughter bouncing off the marble countertop and high ceilings of Claire's designer home. Then I heard it. A beep. Small. Electronic. I froze. My eyes scanned the corners. There, above the pantry door, a small black dome, the kind used in daycares, not kitchens. It blinked once quietly. Recording. I felt a chill run down my spine. Not from guilt, from insult. This wasn't about Ava's safety. It was surveillance. Proof. Evidence of whether I was following her rules. I set Ava down gently. She didn't notice. She was too busy chasing the dog's tail. But I couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. Later, when Ava was napping, I went searching. I opened the binder again now with suspicion in my fingertips. I flipped to the last tab labeled Monitoring and Safety, and there it was. Cameras installed. Kitchen. Living room. Nursery. Front entrance. Footage backed up daily to cloud. And then the kicker. A sticky note. No singing. No unstructured games. Maintain order. That's when the anger came. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Cold. Decisive. She didn't ask me to be there for Ava. She asked me to perform grandmotherhood in a sanitized box. Claire didn't want a babysitter. She wanted a shadow. I left the cameras on. I wanted her to see what came next. I opened every window in the house. Let sunlight flood every corner. I took the color-coded baskets and dumped their contents on the carpet. I let Ava run through them barefoot and beaming. We baked cookies, real ones, with sugar and flour and sticky fingers. She sat on the countertop while I cracked eggs, and when she dropped a spoon into the batter, she whispered, "Oops." I winked. Oops makes the best cookies. That night, I read her goodnight star again. She didn't fall asleep halfway this time. She stayed awake till the very last word, and then whispered, "Sing it." So I did. The lullaby. The old one. The one Claire once begged me to sing again when her nightmares came back after her father left. I held Ava close and sang as if I were sewing back generations with every note. And somewhere, probably from her hotel room in D.C., Claire was watching. Because when I checked my phone that night, I had a new voicemail. Not a text. A voice. "Mom." I saw the footage. She looked happy. But I didn't authorize that song. It's too emotional. You can't just go rogue like this. Please remember the structure. She sounded brittle, as if joy were a risk, as if love had to be managed like her spreadsheets. I didn't call back, but I left the nursery light on just in case Ava woke up, and I put the rag doll on the pillow beside her. Then I sat on the porch, alone, staring up at the moon, thinking of how Claire used to ask me, "Do you think the moon is lonely?" And I'd answer, "No, honey. The moon watches over all of us. That's what keeps her full." But tonight the moon looked hollow. Because I realized something that split my chest clean open. Claire didn't grow up missing things. She grew up resenting how much I gave. And now she was punishing me for it. And the only way she could feel powerful was to erase the kind of love she couldn't control. But she forgot something. I didn't survive all those years alone just to be erased by my own child. And if she wanted a lesson in boundaries, she was about to get one, because I had watched Ava's face bloom with joy, and there was no power on earth that would make me unsee it. The final straw came from the fridge. Friday morning. Ava had woken early with her cheek warm and a sniffle in her voice. Nothing serious, just the kind of thing a mother would notice instantly if she were actually here. I held her close and whispered, "We'll make you feel better." We played soft music while I made her oatmeal. No sugar per the binder, but I added a pinch of cinnamon because love is in the little things. She smiled through a sneeze, then reached her small hand across the table and said, "Grammy, hug." She didn't need to ask twice. After breakfast, I opened the fridge to see if I could make soup. I wasn't expecting to find much. Claire always ordered in, or prepped sterile little portions that looked more like meal kits than food. But there behind a Tupperware of quinoa and a half-used bottle of almond milk was a note I hadn't seen before, folded, tucked inside a plastic bag, labeled simply, "Emergency." I took it out with curiosity, and when I opened it, I felt something go cold in my throat. If my mother becomes emotional or disrupts routine in any way, notify backup caregiver. Do not allow her to leave the premises with Ava under any circumstance. It was signed. Claire's initials, dated 2 weeks ago. She had planned this. Planned for my failure. Planned to undermine me even before I arrived. My hands shook not with fear but betrayal. She didn't trust me with my own granddaughter. The cinnamon I added to the oatmeal, the lullabies, the dancing, all of it. Recorded. Evaluated. Flagged. I wasn't a grandmother here. I was a liability. I stared at the note until my vision blurred. Then I folded it back up, slid it into my pocket, and walked to the nursery where Ava sat in a sunbeam, brushing the doll's tangled hair with a plastic fork. She looked up at me innocent, pure, still unaware that the world around her was made of quiet war. That afternoon, I called the pediatrician's office listed in Claire's emergency file. Not to betray anything, just to ask about Ava's recent care. The receptionist was warm, familiar. "Oh yes, Ava Merrick. Lovely little girl. Claire brought her in last month. Said her mother had passed away, and she needed to update emergency contacts." I stopped breathing. "Her mother?" I asked quietly. "That's what she said. I remember because we sent a sympathy card." I hung up slowly. Claire had declared me dead to the doctor. Officially. Intentionally. My legs gave out before I reached the couch. It wasn't just estrangement. It wasn't silence. It was erasure. She had rewritten the story of her life and removed me from it entirely. And for what? So she could build a curated motherhood without shadows. So no one would know who held her through panic attacks at 10 years old. Who stitched the hem of her first suit before her TEDx talk. All those nights I stayed awake worrying. She replaced them with a signature on a lie. When Ava woke from her nap, I held her longer than usual. Her warmth was a small salvation. But my mind was racing. I couldn't stay here, not like this. But I also couldn't leave her. I was the only real thing in her life. The only one who saw her as a child, not a project. So I made a decision. A slow, careful one, built on logic, not emotion. That night, I packed Ava's favorite toys, her clothes, her toothbrush, not in panic, in quiet resolve. I wasn't kidnapping her. I was taking her to safety, to truth. I left the emergency note on the kitchen table with a short message scribbled beneath it. "You wrote me out of your life, so I gave you the future you wanted. One without me, and without her, for now." Then I tucked the rag doll in Ava's car seat and started the engine before dawn. She slept the whole drive. I didn't cry. I just whispered to the wind, "You called me a risk. Now you'll see how dangerous a mother's love can be." We drove until the sun came up, painting the sky in soft streaks of apricot and pearl. Ava stirred in her car seat just as we crossed the county line, blinking up at the unfamiliar world passing outside her window. "Where are we going, Grammy?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Somewhere quiet, somewhere safe. She nodded as if she understood more than she should. I didn't take her far, just far enough to be free. I had a friend, Miriam, a retired social worker with a warm farmhouse tucked into the hills north of where the city ends and the silence begins. We hadn't spoken in months, but when I texted her, she replied with a simple, "Come." No questions. When we arrived, Miriam stepped onto her porch in a faded linen dress, her white hair glowing in the light. She didn't look shocked. Didn't ask why I had Ava. She only opened her arms wide. Inside the house smelled of cinnamon and wood polish. A quilt hung over the back of the couch. There were fresh cookies on a plate, and books stacked in gentle chaos near every chair. Home, not a mansion, not a curated showroom, just warmth. Ava took to it immediately. She ran her hands along the books, climbed into the rocking chair, found Miriam's old music box and wound it without hesitation. I watched her thinking, she already knows how to belong. She just needed somewhere to do it. That afternoon, I called Claire. I didn't text. I didn't email. I wanted her to hear me. She didn't answer. So I left a message. "Claire, Ava is safe. She's with me. I haven't harmed her. I haven't hidden her. But I have taken her out of a house that treats love like a job description. You declared me dead, Claire. To her doctor, to your friends, to yourself. You said I'd never be a grandmother. But now that your carefully constructed life is cracking, who did you call? I am not a temporary fix. I am not your guilt sponge. You want me back? Then you come here, alone, without control, without cameras, without pre-written scripts. You come as a daughter, not a CEO. I hung up, and for the first time in years I felt like a woman again. Not a ghost, not a utility. That evening, Miriam and I sat on the porch while Ava drew chalk stars on the stone walkway. The crickets chirped like applause. I always knew she'd break something inside you, Miriam said softly, handing me a cup of tea. She didn't break it, I replied. She just froze it. Miriam looked at me with those old, wise eyes. And now, I exhaled slowly. It's thawing. That night, Ava asked if she could sleep beside me. I laid on the small guest bed, her head tucked into my side. She whispered, "Will Mommy be mad?" I didn't lie. I never would. Maybe I said. But sometimes people need to be mad before they understand. She nodded. You smell like pancakes. We laughed. And I realized something I hadn't admitted before. This wasn't just about Claire anymore. This was about legacy, about what we pass on, and what we refuse to pass down. Claire had inherited my silence. But Ava would inherit my strength. The next morning, there was a car at the bottom of the gravel drive. Claire. She didn't text. Didn't call. She climbed out slowly, heels sinking into soft dirt, face drawn, but no longer made up. No blazer, no camera, no control. Just Claire, my daughter, broken open, and about to face the truth she'd spent a lifetime avoiding. Claire didn't knock. She stood on the porch like a woman waiting for judgment. The wind tugged at her loose blouse. She had bags under her eyes, and for the first time in years her voice wasn't sharp when she spoke. "Mom," she said soft. "Is she okay?" I looked her up and down, not to judge, but to really see the woman my daughter had become, stripped of posture and pretense. "She's inside," I replied. "Drawing with Miriam." She nodded, lips pressed tight. Then quieter, "Can I see her?" "No." Her eyes widened, offended at first, then confused, like a child denied dessert. "She doesn't know you're here yet," I said, stepping closer. "I want to talk first. As women, not as mother and daughter. Not as grandmother and mother, just as two people who have hurt each other." Claire glanced toward the door, anxious. "This is kidnapping, Mom." "No, it's a reckoning," I said gently. She crossed her arms, defensive now. "You left with my child. You took her." "I saved her," I snapped, and for the first time my voice cut through the air like thunder. "You declared me dead, Claire." To her doctor. "You planted that story so you wouldn't have to explain why your mother wasn't around. You removed me not for her safety but for your comfort." She froze. Her mouth opened, then closed. And then her face cracked. "Do you know how hard it was," she whispered, "to become someone respectable? To fight to be taken seriously in rooms full of men who see nothing but motherhood as weakness. I needed control. I needed order. And I made you feel small. I finished for her." She looked away. I sighed. "Claire, I raised you alone. I patched your shoes with glue. I worked doubles so you could go to debate camp. I gave you everything I had. You gave me guilt," she snapped. "Every time you smiled and said it was okay, it just made me feel worse." I felt something twist behind my ribs. "So your answer was to erase me?" She wiped her eyes with her sleeve hands trembling. "I didn't know how to carry you and myself at the same time," she said. "You were always so much, so full of love, of sacrifice. I didn't want that for Ava. I wanted her to grow up strong, independent. She can be all those things," I said. "But only if she sees what real strength looks like. And strength isn't silence. It isn't obedience. It's knowing who you are, even when the world doesn't clap for it." Claire swallowed hard. And then she did something I hadn't seen since she was a teenager. She sat, right there on the porch step, like a daughter again, like someone who had run out of performances. "I didn't know how to ask for help," she whispered. "I didn't know how to let you back in." "You didn't have to ask," I said. "You only had to stop pretending I was the villain in your success story." We sat in silence, the kind that holds weight. Then a small voice called out through the screen door. Mommy. Claire turned startled. Ava was peeking out from behind the curtain. Claire stood slowly. Hi, baby. Ava ran to the door but hesitated. Looked at me. Grammy. It's okay, I said, my voice calm but firm. You can go say hi. She opened the door and ran straight into her mother's arms. Claire clutched her so tight I thought they might both vanish. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. I missed you, she whispered. You were gone, Ava asked, eyes wide. Claire nodded. But I'm here now. Ava looked at me. Grammy too. Claire paused, then looked back at me, and nodded. Yes, Grammy too. It was the first time she said it like a promise instead of a placeholder. That night, Claire didn't leave. She stayed for dinner. She helped bathe Ava. She asked about the lullaby. And before she went to bed in the guest room, she stood at the kitchen door and said, I'm sorry, I didn't say it's okay. I said, I know, because healing doesn't need absolution. It just needs the truth. And for the first time in decades, my daughter was finally speaking it. Claire woke before sunrise the next day. I found her in the kitchen barefoot, nursing a cup of coffee she clearly didn't enjoy. She was staring out the window, watching Ava chase shadows in the backyard with Miriam's cat, both of them moving like little ghosts in the misty morning light. She didn't hear me enter. You always hated early mornings, I said softly. Claire didn't flinch, just gave a half smile. I still do, but I couldn't sleep. I poured myself a cup and sat down across from her. There was a quiet between us that didn't demand filling, the kind that comes after a storm when the air is heavy but clean. She finally looked at me. What happens now? I shrugged. That depends on what you're really asking. She thought about that. I'm not good at this, she admitted. I thought if I had systems calendars, the perfect balance between work and motherhood, I could outsmart the chaos. I nodded. But children aren't machines. No, she said. They're mirrors. That line landed harder than she knew, because Ava had reflected back everything Claire had spent years trying to hide. Her fear of failure, her distrust of emotion, her shame about her roots. You know, Claire continued, I watched every one of those videos. The ones from the cameras. I kept waiting to catch you breaking a rule. And you did. Dozens of them. But every single one. She trailed off, voice cracking. Every single one made her happier. I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the only response worthy of confession. I told her you died, she whispered, almost ashamed. I thought it would be cleaner, simpler. It wasn't, I replied. She nodded, tears welling again. I know. Then after a long pause, I want to undo it. Not just what I said, but how I've been trying to raise her without you. I thought protecting her meant protecting her from the past. But maybe the past is the only thing that can keep her human. I looked at her, not as the daughter who shut me out, but as the little girl who used to sleepwalk into my bed during thunderstorms. You don't need to undo it, I said gently. You need to grow from it. And let her grow too. Claire put her face in her hands. I don't know how to fix all of it. You don't have to fix it, I said. You just have to stay. Outside, Ava was chasing bubbles now, giggling with the kind of freedom I hadn't heard in a child for years. Claire stood and moved to the window, watching her daughter, really watching for the first time. I used to think I didn't need anyone, she whispered. That needing people made me weak. Then you've already changed more than you realize, I said. She turned to me, her voice trembling. Will you come home with us? The question hung in the air. Not a demand, not a plea, a true question. I don't know, I replied honestly. I'm not ready to walk back into a house wired with surveillance, into routines designed to exclude me. If I come, it has to be because there's room for me, not just a function you need filled. Claire nodded. I can change that. Not overnight, I said. And not for me, for her. Then she said something I never expected. Can we all stay here a few more days? Just slow down. It was the most grown-up thing I'd ever heard her say. I reached across the table and touched her hand. Of course. That evening, Miriam made soup and Ava helped set the table. Claire read her a bedtime story, one of the old ones. She stumbled through it, voice unsure, but Ava didn't mind. After tucking her in, Claire returned to the porch where I was sitting with Miriam. She asked for a lullaby, she said. I froze. I didn't know what to sing. Without missing a beat, I said, Good night, star. Good night, moon. Claire's eyes lit up, then softened. Good night, you. I'll see you soon. She whispered the last line with me, and for the first time in years we sang together, mother and daughter. Different melodies, but somehow, finally in harmony. On the third morning, Claire offered to make pancakes. The batter was lumpy. The first one burned. Ava wrinkled her nose at the shape. It's a dinosaur, Claire insisted. It's a blob, Ava countered. We all laughed. It was awkward and warm the way early healing always is, like muscles learning how to move again after being frozen. Claire was trying, not performing, not orchestrating, trying. That afternoon, I caught her sitting in the garden alone, flipping through a photo album Miriam had left on the table. Most of the pictures were of strangers, Miriam's nieces, old boyfriends, half-faded Christmases, but one photo stopped Claire cold. A girl maybe 10, sitting on a back porch barefoot eating a slice of watermelon with her mother. Not us, but it could have been. She turned the album to me, pointing at the mother. She looks like you. She looks like someone who stayed, I replied. Claire stared at the photo for a long time. Why didn't you ever leave? She finally asked. When things got bad with Dad. When I said all those things. Why did you stay? I paused. Not because I didn't know, but because the truth deserved air. Because I knew the part of you that hated me wasn't really you, I said. It was grief, and fear, and the pressure of being a girl who saw too much too soon. Claire's eyes glossed over. Sometimes I think I was more your burden than your daughter. My chest ached. Claire, I said softly, you were everything. My reason, my fight, my future. I didn't stay despite the pain. I stayed because I believed one day you'd see me not just as a mother, but as a woman. One who didn't always get it right but never stopped loving you. Her voice cracked. I'm trying. I know, I whispered. We sat in the garden until the wind picked up, and Ava came out with the rag doll asking if we could build a blanket fort inside. Claire smiled and nodded. And that's how we ended up on the floor of the living room under a canopy of old sheets reading books by flashlight while soup simmered on the stove. Later that night, after Ava had fallen asleep tucked in between two plush bears and her frayed doll, Claire joined me in the kitchen. She held a glass of wine she hadn't touched. I've been thinking about what happens next, she said. So have I replied. She took a breath. I don't want to go back to the way things were. I want you in Ava's life, not as a convenience, as a presence, a constant. I want that too, I said, but not at the expense of myself. Claire nodded slowly. There's more, she added. The board of my company found out I left Ava with you. Apparently one of the partners saw a clip from my nanny cam. Something about a dancing grandmother made it to their ears. I raised an eyebrow. And they loved it. Now I was surprised. They said it made me human, she said, smiling a little. Said for once I wasn't the woman in heels with a rehearsed speech. I was real. She looked at me almost shyly. I think I forgot how powerful that can be. I reached across the counter, touched her hand. We all forget, I said. What matters is whether we remember in time. Claire looked at me. Truly. Looked. Then, in the quietest voice I'd heard from her yet. Will you come home with us? This time she didn't say to help or to stay the week. Just come home. And this time, I said yes, but on one condition. You take the cameras down. She smiled. Already gone. We drove back together 2 days later. Ava in the back seat singing off-key, Claire humming softly beside her. When we pulled into the driveway of her house, something felt different. The walls looked softer, the air less sterile. Inside, there was a framed photo on the entry table. Not of Claire, not of Ava. Of me holding newborn Claire in the hospital, half asleep, smiling. You kept that? I asked. She nodded. I didn't know how to look at it before, but now, I want Ava to know all of where she comes from. And that night, as I rocked Ava to sleep and sang the lullaby again, I felt a peace I hadn't known in decades. I wasn't the babysitter. I wasn't the emergency plan. I was home. The next few weeks passed like a slow, sacred rhythm. We found our own routines, not the rigid ones in Claire's old binder, but the kind that evolved naturally like breath. Morning walks, afternoon baking, Late-night stories whispered in the quiet glow of Ava's room. Claire kept her promise. No more surveillance. No more binders. No more conditions. She began working from home more often, letting go of the illusion that motherhood had to look like control. She even invited me to one of her firm's webinars, Balancing Leadership and Legacy. I watched her speak about building a business, yes, but more importantly, about rebuilding trust. She introduced herself not just as CEO, but as a daughter and a mother. I saw the chat explode with comments. Powerful, relatable. Wish my mom and I could get here. She had grown not in ambition, but in depth. But healing isn't always linear. One afternoon, I came home from the market to find Ava sitting on the kitchen floor crying. Claire stood over her, visibly flustered, holding a broken ceramic bowl. She dropped it, Claire said. My grandmother's. Her voice was brittle, that old-edge perfectionism control creeping back in. She didn't mean to, I said gently, crouching beside Ava. Did you, sweetheart? Ava sobbed. I wanted to help wash it. I was being careful. I picked her up, held her close. Claire's face fell. I didn't yell, she whispered. I swear. But I felt it rising. The part of me that wants everything perfect. I nodded. Perfection is a mask we wear when we're scared. She sat down at the table, covering her face with her hands. I don't want to become her, she murmured. I don't want to become the kind of mother who makes her child feel like a mistake. You're not, I said, but you're afraid of failing. And that fear, it's loud, louder than love sometimes, until we choose to make it quiet. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. How did you do it? Raise me with so little, and still make me feel safe. I paused, thinking back to long nights and cold winters and peanut butter on white bread. I didn't give you everything, I said, but I gave you all of me. That's what children remember. That night, Claire took Ava into the backyard. They built a little garden together, her idea. Claire handed Ava the seeds, let her dig the dirt with her fingers, let her make a mess. They laughed. Got muddy, Ava beamed. I watched from the window, arms folded, a warm ache in my chest. Later, as we cleaned up, Claire asked if I'd take Ava for a weekend while she traveled for a conference. But not just to fill in, she added. I want you to have your own time with her, your own space. It's not babysitting, it's grandmothering, I agreed. And the weekend was magic. We painted, we made grilled cheese sandwiches. We had a fancy dress night where Ava wore a tiara and I wore an old scarf as a cape. On Sunday night, as I tucked her in, she held my face and whispered, You're not dead, Grammy. I froze. She smiled. Mommy said she was wrong. You're alive. In the best way. That sentence undid me. I kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and stood in the hallway for a long time, letting the weight of it wash over me. Alive. In the best way. That's what healing feels like. Not the absence of pain, but the return of presence. Later that week, Claire handed me something unexpected. A key. To the house, she said. No strings. Come when you want. You're part of this family again, not because I need you, because Ava needs you, and because I finally understand that I do too. I held the key in my palm, heart thudding. I'll come when it matters, I said. Claire smiled. It always matters. And as the sun poured through the window, catching the tiny garden Ava had planted with her tiny hands, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It rewrites the ending. And ours was just beginning. Spring turned to summer without ceremony. Just longer days, softer evenings, and the scent of something new taking root. Ava's garden began to sprout. First green shoots, then little blossoms, unruly, imperfect, radiant. Claire joked that Ava must have inherited her stubbornness from me. I'll take that as a compliment, I said. We fell into a rhythm, our own version of harmony. Claire no longer flinched when schedules shifted or plans unraveled. Ava thrived in the open space between structure and spontaneity, and I, for the first time in decades, felt welcomed instead of merely tolerated. But peace doesn't mean perfection. It was a Sunday morning when Claire's past came knocking. Literally, I was in the kitchen folding dish towels when I heard the doorbell. Claire opened it before I could get there, and there he was. Ethan, Ava's father, Claire's former fiancé, the man who vanished when the pregnancy became inconvenient. I recognized him instantly. Tall, calculated charm, that corporate smugness still clinging to his collar. Claire froze in the doorway. Ava stood behind her, clutching my leg. "I just want to talk," Ethan said. Claire didn't move. Her voice was ice. "We've been fine without you." "I know," he said, hands raised in mock surrender. "But I've changed. I've been following your work, Claire. You're incredible. And Ava, she's beautiful. I want to know her." Claire looked to me, eyes wide, fearful, torn. She wasn't just a daughter now. She was a mother. And I saw the war playing out behind her eyes. I stepped in. "You left," I said, calm but cutting. "Not just Claire. Ava. You walked away when a girl became inconvenient. Why now?" "I made a mistake," he said. "And I'm here to make it right." Claire finally spoke. "You don't get to decide that." He shifted tactics. "I have rights, Claire. She's my daughter, too." The moment he said it, Ava shrank back, eyes wide. She didn't know this man. Didn't want to. Claire's breath hitched. And then suddenly she stepped forward and shut the door in his face. Just like that. No yelling. No dramatic speeches. Just quiet resolve. She turned, breathing hard. "I was scared I'd collapse," she whispered. "That I'd let him in. That I'd forget everything I've rebuilt. But I didn't." I put my hand on her shoulder. "That's what strength looks like." That evening, Claire explained to Ava who Ethan was. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. She said, "Some people leave when things get hard. But the ones who stay, the ones who choose you, even when no one's watching, those are your real family." Ava looked at me. "You stayed." I nodded. And in that moment, I knew Ethan's appearance hadn't shaken us. It had confirmed us. We weren't fragile. We were forged. That night, Claire filed for legal guardianship protections. She added me as Ava's emergency contact. And she updated every document Ethan had once been on. When I saw my name next to Claire's under parent guardian, authorized pickup, I wept. Not because I needed validation, but because I finally had recognition. Claire walked over, her tone light but her eyes serious. "Grammy," she said, "I want Ava to grow up with you in the frame, not just behind it." I smiled through tears. "Then let's paint a new picture." And we did. Together. Summer deepened. The house, once cold and echoing with ambition, now pulsed with life. Messy, vibrant, real. Finger-painted art taped to the fridge. A sticky note from Ava on my teacup. "Louv ou Grammy." Claire's heels traded for slippers. Music drifting from the kitchen instead of conference calls. But then came the invitation. A glossy envelope addressed to Claire. Gold foil. Embossed seal. Inside. A formal invitation to the annual National Women's Leadership Gala in Washington, D.C., one of the most prestigious events in her field, sponsored by the very firm that once questioned her authenticity. Claire sat on the porch with me as she opened it. Her fingers trembled slightly. "They want me to give the keynote. Full audience. Press coverage. Cameras." "That's incredible," I said. She didn't smile. "They've also requested Ava be there. As part of the working mother's narrative." She made air quotes with a bitter edge. "And you?" I asked. "What do you want?" Claire looked out over the yard where Ava was digging holes with her plastic shovel, dirt under her nails, and a crown of weeds on her head. "I want her to stay wild," she whispered. "To stay free, not become a story someone else writes." "Then, don't let them write it," I said. "Tell your own." She looked at me surprised. "You think I should do it? If you want to, not to prove anything, not to fix anything, but to show something real?" She nodded slowly. "If I go, I want you both there, but not as props, as family." 2 weeks later, we boarded the plane together. Claire in a simple navy dress, Ava with glitter on her cheeks, me in a scarf. Ava insisted on wrapping around my shoulders like a cape. The hotel was grand. The lights too bright. The women powerful and polished. But Claire stood out. Not because she fit the mold, but because she broke it. When she stepped on stage holding Ava's hand in one and her speech in the other, the crowd hushed. She began not with stats, not with her accolades, but with us. 3 years ago, I said I'd never let my daughter know my mother. I thought I was protecting her from the instability I grew up with. But what I was really doing was cutting her off from the strongest woman I've ever known. Gasps. Murmurs. Silence. She continued. My mother didn't give me perfection. She gave me resilience. She didn't build systems. She built safety. She wasn't always seen, but she never once disappeared. And when I tried to write her out of my life, she came back not with anger, but with love. The audience leaned forward. Ava clung to Claire's leg, and Claire looked right at me, voice breaking but strong. This is my daughter. This is my mother. And this triangle of women is the reason I lead the way I do. Thunderous applause. Not polite. Not performative. Real. Later that night in our suite, Claire handed me the bouquet the event organizers gave her. I want this in your kitchen, she said. Ava piped up, can we press the flowers in a book, Grammy, so they don't go away? I kissed her forehead. Yes, love. We'll keep them forever. And as I tucked her in, Claire sat beside us, humming the lullaby I once sang through tears. In that moment, the three of us weren't grandmother, mother, child. We were healers. Of each other. Of what had been broken. Of what we thought we had lost. And in the soft hum of the night, I realized, some women build empires. Others build bridges. Claire had learned to do both, because she finally remembered. Who taught her how? We returned from Washington not as guests, but as something more whole, stitched back together with threads we never thought we'd find again. Claire hung a framed photo in the hallway, one of the three of us backstage at the gala, her eyes proud, Ava in my arms. Both of us laughing at something off camera. She titled it, Where the Legacy Really Began. But healing, as I'd learned, doesn't arrive without tests. It came in the form of a phone call 2 weeks later. Ava had fallen at preschool, nothing serious, just a bruised knee and a scrape, but Claire couldn't leave a client meeting. She called me in a panic. I hate this, she said. I swore I'd be there for every cry, every bandage. You're not failing her, I told her gently. You're showing her what a circle of care looks like. Still, I could hear the guilt pressing on her chest like a stone. I picked up Ava and brought her home. We made magic healing soup, really just chicken broth with alphabet pasta and a lot of love. She sat in my lap, her bandage covered in stickers, and asked Grammy, what happens if you go away again? I looked her straight in the eyes. I won't. That night, Claire came home early. She walked into the kitchen still in heels, eyes glassy. She told her teacher you were her second mom, she said with a laugh that caught halfway through. I said nothing, because we both knew what that meant. The next morning, Claire did something unexpected. She brought out the binder. The binder. The one she'd once filled with rules and boundaries and surveillance codes. She placed it on the kitchen table and opened it. But it wasn't filled with schedules anymore. It held photos. Claire's first lost tooth. Me bandaging her skinned knee. Ava's muddy birthday cake. Finger paintings. Grocery receipts. Notes. Doodles. It was a living memory. She handed it to me. I renamed it. The label on the front read, This is Us. The real manual. I didn't cry. I breathed. And it felt like the first full breath in years. That weekend we hosted a neighborhood gathering. Ava helped decorate Claire-baked lemon bars, and I taught her how to fold napkins into flowers. Neighbors came. Children ran barefoot, and Claire introduced me proudly. This is my mom. She raised me. Twice. That night, after Ava was asleep, Claire and I sat under the string lights in the backyard. She sipped tea. I sipped the moment. I used to think love had to be earned, Claire said. That it was conditional, performative. Now I realize it's grown, watered, tended. Like Ava's garden, I said. She smiled. And it's yours too. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. A charm. Silver. Shaped like a star. Etched with a single word. Stay. She fastened it to a chain and handed it to me. For all the nights I didn't ask you to, and for all the ones you did anyway. My hand closed around it. No speech. No ceremony. Just gravity. And grace. And as the lights swayed above us and the night pulled close around our shoulders, I thought, this isn't the ending of our story. It's the season that grows the roots deeper so that the next generation can stand taller. Autumn crept in on golden feet. Ava started kindergarten proud in her sparkly sneakers and mismatched barrettes. Claire cried the first day, not in front of Ava, of course, but later at the kitchen counter with her coffee gone cold. She didn't even look back. she said, laughing through the tears. Just walked in like she owned the place. She's your daughter, I said. And mine. Claire smiled. The best of both of us. That afternoon, we walked hand in hand to pick Ava up. When she saw us through the glass, her face lit up, and she ran into Claire's arms, then mine. That night, we opened a bottle of wine and talked. Not about milestones, or plans, or performance, but about legacy. I've been thinking, Claire said, about starting something new, a project. I raised an eyebrow. Another company. She shook her head. A center for single mothers, working mothers, grandmothers who raise grandchildren. A space with mentorship, childcare, education, real tools. Not just Instagram advice and overpriced planners. She hesitated. And I want you to help me build it. I stared at her. You want me to be your partner. I want you to be my co-founder, she said. Not just in this, but in everything. I can't teach these women what I haven't lived. But you have. It took me a moment to find my voice. I've been erased before, I said quietly. From lives. From stories. From legal documents. If I help build this, you'll own it, she said firmly. In name. In spirit. In heart. I looked at her, this daughter of mine who had once slammed doors and now opened them for others, and I nodded. We spent that winter drafting plans, not just of buildings and services, but of culture, language, representation. We called it the Hearth Project, a place where women return not to be rescued, but to reclaim. When we finally opened the doors 6 months later, Ava was there in a ribboned dress holding the scissors with both of us. I now pronounce this open for hugs, she declared, and the crowd laughed. We hosted workshops, book circles, legal aid sessions, healing nights. Grandmothers came with notebooks. Mothers came with trauma. Daughters came with hunger for more than survival. And Claire, she didn't just become a better leader. She became a witness. To the power of inherited wisdom. To the truth of shared resilience. To the light that only shines when women stop hiding their scars. One night, after a long workshop with exhausted mothers and tearful grandmothers, I walked into the quiet office and found Claire alone. She was staring at the wall where we'd painted 3 words. You're still here. She turned to me, voice soft. Do you ever feel too old to begin again? I shook my head. No, I just feel lucky to be here now. She smiled, and I saw the child in her again. The one who once danced in the kitchen. The one I'd never stopped waiting for. And as we stood there, 2 women who had survived each other, I realized forgiveness isn't the end of a story. It's the door to the one we were meant to write together. Spring returned softer this time. The garden Ava planted had become wild with color tulips, twisting beside sunflowers, tomatoes tangled in marigolds. It didn't follow rules. It thrived because of it. One evening, she pulled me outside with muddy hands and said, Grammy, this one's for you. She held up a sunflower so tall it curved down to her height. It grew because you sang to it, she whispered. I didn't remember singing to the flowers, but she must have heard me hum during early mornings or maybe imagined it. Either way, she believed it. And that belief was its own kind of miracle. That same week, Claire was asked to write an essay for a national magazine. What legacy means to me. She read it aloud the night before the deadline, her voice trembling but strong. Legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's what we carry forward. I spent most of my life trying to become someone important. Then I realized the most important thing I could become was real. My mother didn't raise me to be perfect. She raised me to stand up again. She raised me to stay. And when I told her she'd never be a grandmother, she waited. She didn't fight me. She didn't beg. She stayed. That is her legacy. And now it's mine too. I sat across from her, hands trembling around my tea. Claire looked up, eyes full. Do you think I've done enough? I shook my head, then smiled. You've done more than enough. You've become. The next day, I found something unexpected. A small box on my nightstand. Wrapped in ribbon, no tag. Inside was a bracelet, simple silver with 3 charms. A sunflower, a crescent moon, and one single word. Stay. It was the same word Ava had whispered. The same word I'd lived by even in silence. As I fastened it around my wrist, I thought about how close we had come to losing this. To letting old wounds stay open. To becoming ghosts in each other's stories. But now, Now Claire called me when Ava lost her first tooth. Now Ava saved her biggest hugs for bedtime and whispered, "Grammy, I love you more than pudding." Now I was no longer the erased matriarch, the refused parcel the woman left out of family photos. I was rooted, seen, chosen. Claire came into the room, hair still damp from the shower, and said, "I've been thinking." I raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous words." She grinned. "Let's write a book together." "A parenting book," I teased. "No," she said. "A legacy book. Stories from mothers and grandmothers who stayed, who healed, who loved anyway." I looked at her, at the daughter I had almost lost, at the woman who had once pushed me out of her life only to ask me now to write beside her. "Let's begin tonight," I said. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and Ava, half asleep in her arms, murmured, "Tell the one about the moon again." So we did, and in that moment I knew I hadn't just become a grandmother. I had become a story keeper. A quiet revolution passed down in lullabies, in cinnamon oatmeal, in arms that refused to let go. A legacy not of perfection, but of presence. And it all began the day she said, "You'll never be a grandmother." And I chose not to argue. I chose to stay. If you had asked me years ago what my legacy would be, I might have said survival. I would have listed the things I endured: single motherhood, heartbreak, estrangement. I would have measured my life in sacrifices, in the nights I cried alone, in the birthdays I wasn't invited to. But now I measure it in sunlight on Ava's cheeks, in the warmth of Claire's hand when she reaches for mine without thinking, in the sound of 3 generations laughing over burnt cookies. I thought being written out of the story meant the end. But it was only the intermission. When Claire told me I'd never be a grandmother, I believed her. But I also believed in time. In grace, in the deep, slow truth that love, when real, does not expire. It waits, not in silence, but in readiness. And when the moment came, I didn't bring vengeance. I brought a backpack, a lullaby, and the same quiet arms that once held Claire when she was Ava's age. Now every time Ava reaches for me, every time Claire says, "I couldn't do this without you," I am reminded. Legacy isn't loud. It's the gentle presence that refuses to leave. The voice that hums in the kitchen long after everyone's gone to bed. The arms that stay open even when they've been bruised. So to anyone who's ever been shut out, silenced, or replaced, don't underestimate the power of staying, of waiting not with bitterness but with dignity, because sometimes the greatest revenge is not slamming the door behind you, but leaving it ajar, for when they finally remember where love truly lives, and when they do, be there.